Our humble prayers to the Lord Almighty. We ever seek His grace and blessings. Our salutations to the entire Guru Parampara, with special reverence and prayers to Sri Adi Shankaracharya. Om Tat Sat. A warm welcome to all of you again. We are on Discourse 20, the 28th of April 2020, Tuesday. The Hindu Panchang, Sharvari Nama Samvatsara, Uttarayan, Vasanta Rutu, Vaishakha Masa, Shukla Paksh, Panchami. Today indeed is a very auspicious day for all Vedanta students, being the birth celebrations of Sri Adi Shankaracharya. So I would like to briefly tell you all about his life story, an amazing and marvelous life story. See, we should know what a guru is, and we should draw inspiration from such great souls. That is the purpose. And at the same time, you are offering your reverence and gratitude. So Sri Adi Shankaracharya is none other than the Amsha avatar of Lord Shiva. And then how is he important to seekers like us? Swami Vivekananda used to call him a commander-in-chief of Advaita Vedanta. And so did our Gurudev as well, Swami Chinmayananda. That was the kind of a power he had in him. He was more like a commander, an army commander. You see now, as I mentioned about what he did in his lifetime, it needs that kind of vigor and that energy and that strength that was predominant in him, apart from the humongous amount of spiritual knowledge he had. See, such things, because he's an Amsha avatar of Lord Shiva, you can really expect such things to happen. As you all know, after Sri Vedavyasji wrote the 4 Vedas, then several Upanishads, which run into thousands of Upanishads, which was about 5,000 years ago, they had written. Now, post that, there is so much of volumes and volumes of knowledge, which was very difficult to understand. One is, a lifetime is not enough for you to even finish a portion of the study of the scriptures. And during those days when they didn't have this fast mode of transportation, nor they had the internet or anything of such kind where they could connect. Imagine, like, even if people wanted to plan and distribute the proper dissecting of the entire Vedas, it was not possible. Simple reason is that it was too vast. Now here, in such a kind of situation, Adi Shankaracharya was one with those miraculous powers. See, God takes a birth when he feels that he needs to do something to help the mankind, which is beyond the level of mankind. So Adi Shankaracharya came and he wrote commentaries on the Prasthanatraya, which is the Brahma Sutras, the 10 major Upanishads, and the Bhagavad Gita. That was a commendable work. He comprised them. He brought them into this entire supreme knowledge into a capsule. That is his greatness. Born in 788 in Kerala, Kaladi. Kaladi actually happens to be the father's place, but he is known to be born there. However, as you all know, normally a child is born at his mother's place, and that is Velianath, which is just about 20-30 kilometers away from Kaladi. At age of 8, he leaves home, saying what to his mother? Now, father has died at the age of 6. About 2 years later, he tells his mother, "Oh mother, I want to take sannyas. Please give me permission. I have lots of work to do. I want to go to the Himalayas. I want to study the scriptures, and I want to do so many things. And if I'm here, I won't be able to do that." Now imagine a mother, a lone mother, no other siblings, no other relatives. What would be the fate of the mother? But she still, after a lot of insistence of Adi Shankaracharya, there goes a story actually. He is bathing in the river, and then a crocodile catches his feet, and then mother is shouting in pain, and that time he tells the mother, "See, I've been asking you that what if I lose my life over here? At least now you allow me to do the spiritual work which I have in my mind, and hopefully the crocodile will leave my foot." And she says, "Yes, I allow you." And immediately the crocodile leaves the child's foot and goes away. But she says, "One condition, my son, when I am about to die, I want you by my side." He says, "I promise you, wherever I am, I will ensure that at the time of your death, I'll be next to you." That way he takes his permission, and then he goes to the Himalayas straight. See, in those days, it was all available only at the Himalayas. All this knowledge, what we are talking about, was nowhere discussed on the plains. Plains mean we are not in the hills, no? We are on the plains. Nowhere here this knowledge was available. You wanted this, you have to go and stay in the Himalayas. And they will not immediately give you. They will see your interest. Only if you have that quenching thirst to get this knowledge, maybe after a year or 2 or 3 or even after 10 years, you will have to just be working in the ashram doing seva. That was the conditions these sages had put. It was not that easily given, because they say this is something very precious, and people who take it very seriously in life, only those are the deserving persons who can get this. People who come to this as a casual affair, no. So he goes there. He is a child of 8 years. He goes to Govindapadacharya in the Himalayas, who was supposed to be one of the great gurus of those days. And he prostrates before him. He is with his students in the ashram, obviously teaching during the daytime. And he says, "Hey Guru Varya, I have come to learn the scriptures from you. Please be kind on me and teach me the scriptures." Now Govindapadacharya looks at him. What is this, a 8-year-old boy? What is he wanting to do? So see, they are compassionate, kind. So what he does is, he very cleverly, he tells him, "Hey my child, you please write a commentary on Sri Vishnu Sahasranam and come back, and then I'll start my coaching for you." He says, "Okay sir, I'll do that," and then he goes away. Now all the other students and all who were with the teacher said, "Acharya, What is this? He says, see, I can't just turn away a boy. Maybe he has got some interest, he has come, genuine interest, but I know that it is not his capacity to learn at this age. So I just told him, so he'll come after some 8-10 years or so, writing a commentary on Vishnu Sahasranam, on all the 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu is not that simple. So that's how, if he comes after 10 years or so, then he's pretty old enough for me to teach him. Okay, the class started again, and to everybody's surprise, he comes in just 2 days. And he places the written document in front of Govindapadacharya. Now, Govindapadacharya reads the commentary and he has tears flowing down his cheeks. Wonderful in-depth commentary about the Vishnu Sahasranam. So lucid, so much meaningful, and trying to explain in various possible ways for a common man to understand. That is very important here. See, what a common man could understand is what is required, because his purpose is to serve mankind. And he immediately says, great job, my child. Let's start our studies. And likewise, he studies under Govindapadacharya. And he, whatever he could do, and in whatever shortest possible time he could learn, he learns from him. The very second day of the teaching, Govindapadacharya asked him, can you tell me who you are? So there, see, a child, if anybody asks who you are, what does a child say? I am so and so, I am come from the state of Kerala, and my father's name, my mother's name, and this. That's what he says, no? But what a beautiful answer this small child of 8 years gives Govindapadacharya. In 6 sentences, he tells, in 6 verses, first 5 verses he tells, I am not all this. What we do in the Panchakosha meditation, what we are doing now, he says, I am not all this. And in the 6th verse, he says, I am that, essentially, that pure consciousness. And that is known as the Nirvana Shatakam. Shat means 6. Shatakam is a Nirvana Shatakam, Atma Shatakam. In 2 names it is called. It's extremely popular, which we are actually doing on a daily basis. The same meditation we are doing. So the teacher is even more fulfilled about him. And now his studies go on one side, and then he simultaneously learns Tantra Vidya, which is magical powers, from several great teachers again there in the Himalayas, who are those yogis who are at a different level altogether. Now, what are those Tantra Vidyas? Like walking on water, walking in space, then Parakaya Pravesha. Parakaya Pravesha is you can go into the body of a dead. Till the time you want, you can be there in the dead body, where the dead body gets up and it starts functioning again in the normal way. That was a para, others, kaya, body, pravesha, entry. During that 8th century, there was huge confusion about our Hindu religion. There were so many fragments, so many schools of thought, and so much of infighting. Now he consolidates all of them into 6 major schools. The Nyaya, the Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, Vedanta, Sankhya, and Yoga. But he was only an ardent follower of Vedanta, Advaita philosophy. He used to go from place to place conducting debates, because the point was like everybody is talking their own sense about God and religion. So he had to enter into a debate with them, make them understand that your understanding is wrong, you are unnecessarily teaching the wrong things to the mankind. And the condition then was like, if you lose the debate, you have to follow the person who has won the debate. You have to become a shishya. So likewise, he gets into all these philosophical debates, and he brings a kind of a streamlined understanding in the entire country. One interesting debate which I would like to mention to you all. Now, during those days, you have, popular schools, what you so-called that he is the best types. So Kumarila Bhatta was one of the greatest scholars of those days. And his ardent student was one Mandana Mishra, who was in his almost in his late 60s that time. Now Shankaracharya, by then he is a boy of 20 years old. Now he says, I have more or less completed my work in terms of debating with all the other small, medium, upper medium segments of the religious leaders, and now is the time where if I'm able to win a debate with this Mandana Mishra, then it will be like a tremendous consolidation. So he goes to Mandana Mishra. He prostrates before him and he says, Your Holiness, I've come here for a debate on Advaita Vedanta. Now, Mandana Mishra, he looks at him and he says, nobody dares even come and talk to me, and you are talking of a debate with me. See, that was the time, where there's no transmission of news. So many do not know. And he's talking about the length and breadth of the country he has to do. So the Mandana Mishra, he looks at him and he says, you are a young lad. But as a Vedantin, that's their pride, that whoever challenges or invites, they don't say no, for whatever reason it is. Here you may feel that he is a small lad, what to talk to him. He can say, no, I don't want to talk to you. After you're old, you come to me. But he says, okay, I respect what you want. And he tells him, you choose a judge. He was fair. Now, in reply to this, Shankaracharya is also fair. You know what he tells him? Your Holiness, Mandana Mishra's wife Ubhaya Bharati was also a scholar, a well-known scholar. So he says, why don't we have Srimati Ubhaya Bharati as the judge? That is your wife. And the debate starts. Ubhaya Bharati had put 2 garlands on each of them, one on each of them, a jasmine flower garlands, and whoever was losing, his garland would fade away first. That is because of that nervousness and of course on the debate and various other fronts. So that was, she had made that kind of a judgment. If it becomes very subtle, then this gives me an indication to know who is the loser, because sometimes they both may be going parallelly. So day 1 over, day 2 over, 3 days over, 1 week over, 10 days over, huge crowd is accumulating to listen to this debate. Now, around the 18th day or so, she sees that her husband is losing. And then she finally announces, yes, Mandana Mishra has lost. But now she is a scholar herself. She comes up with a very important question. She says, look, Shankaracharya, I am the better half of Mandana Mishra. So if we have one over him, you have only one half. Now you have to debate with me for winning the other half. Technically, logically, how you look at it, it sounds different. But Shankaracharya says, yes, madam, I'm ready to argue with you. Now, she's a clever lady. She sits down for argument, and she knows that Shankaracharya is a celibate, a sannyasi, right from the age of 8. She asks him question about procreation and sexual intercourse and these kind of things, which he definitely has no knowledge. Now Shankaracharya, he says, yes, this is a very important, it's like a bouncer you have played on me now. But he says, give me 1 week's time. And she knows, for the sake of answering Ubhay Bharati and winning this argument, he will not break his celibacy. That also she knows. Okay, why 1 week? You take 10 days, no problem. Now that is the time where Shankaracharya does a parakaya pravesha into a king who is about to die. He, with his powers, he understands, gets to know that there is a king who is breathing his last. He waits there, and while after he is dead, it is confirmed, then he does the parakaya pravesha into the king. And the king, of course, had several queens and things, and enough of that intimate relationship. So he learns entering his body, and eventually he comes back and answers all the questions to Ubhay Bharati, what she had asked. Ubhay Bharati accepts defeat. Mandana Mishra, the one of the topmost religious head you can call of those days, he finally accepts Shankaracharya as his guru, because that was the condition. You have to give up what you are preaching and you have to accept the winner as the guru. And the condition was that if Shankaracharya lost, he not only accepting Mandana Mishra as the guru, the condition was that he had to give up celibacy and marry, which Shankaracharya had agreed. So Mandana Mishra eventually becomes the guru of a person who is in his late 60s, becomes a disciple of a 20-year-old boy. And he eventually becomes one of the top 5 shishyas of Shankaracharya, known as Sureshwaracharya. And with this, Shankaracharya, now he has bought a lot of equivalence on the religion in our country. He has strengthened it, removed all the confusion, and he teaches in the utmost lucid manner across the length and breadth of the country. It is told he passed away in the year 1820 at the age of 32, and during that period he has travelled Kashmir to Kanyakumari 5 times by foot. He establishes about 4 mutts in India to promulgate the concept of Sanatana Dharma. And the 4 mutts are Badrinath, Dwarkanath, Puri and Sringeri. There are several other stories to talk about such great spiritual heroes, which only gives us that inner feeling of confidence that yes, with their grace we also can understand this in-depth knowledge, because they say this Advaita Vedanta, the supreme truth of the Lord, can neither be understood by the mind nor can be perceived by the senses. Then you tell me what is left for us to understand. Anything, any experience in this world comes only through our senses and mind, isn't it? So I would call it as God's grace and the Guru's grace. So to such a profound guru, we have to bow down with all humility and sincerely seek his blessings for making this knowledge, whatever we are learning, to come as a reality in our lives. Okay. See, it is a matter of not only driving and invoking courage and confidence, but a great gratitude to a guru. I tell you, while I was studying in detail, everywhere and everywhere it was nothing but Sri Shankaracharya's commentary was coming of help to us. We were reading the Upanishads. We couldn't make out head and tail of what they have said in the Upanishad. And he in his commentary used to dissect from the middle sometimes, from the beginning sometimes, from the end sometimes, with picking up those words and putting it in a sequence and explaining with his perceptions of greater understanding for us. So all this is only possible because of such great scholars and teachers who were born in a country like India. Okay, now we move on. So we are on the subject of Buddhi Yoga, that is Karma Yoga primarily, where Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna, Arjuna, I know now I have preached you the supreme knowledge, and for that understanding you need a clean mind, Chitta Shuddhi. For that we need to do mind cleansing, which is Chitta Shuddhi. Otherwise what happens? The moment you sit down to understand, your mind will run in 10 different directions. Forget about meditation. To be established in that knowledge is meditation. But initially, to understand even the knowledge, you need a decent amount of concentration to understand, isn't it? So here Arjuna says, okay, but what can I do? He says, don't worry, I'm not asking you to do anything different from your daily activity. He's now going to disclose in 49th and 50th verses how you can do Karma Yoga with whatever actions you have been doing. Okay. You all want a recap of the previous verses, 47, 48? Quickly you want me to tell you? Okay, I'll just briefly explain. So what he says, you do your work as an offering unto me. Then he talks about the result. As far as result is concerned, have a samatvam, which means an equipoised mind. Whatever comes, accept it as the prasad, which is from the Lord. And then whenever you are doing work, he said, don't go with an attachment. I plus I want is an attachment, isn't it? So don't go with that. Have that feeling, I am not working for myself, but only for God. This is the Buddhi Yoga attitude. The Karma Yoga hits the desire, which we are talking about. And the Sankhya Yoga hits the ignorance of desire. To understand where does this desire come from. For those aspects, it is Sankhya Yoga. But primarily, even to understand Sankhya Yoga, you need the Karma Yoga to cleanse your mind. Okay. Now we all read together verse number 49. Okay. You please repeat after me. दूरेण ह्यवरं कर्म बुद्धियोगात् धनञ्जय बुद्धौ शरणमन्विच्छ कृपणाः फलहेतवः कृपणाः फलहेतवः. He's saying, Arjuna, I pity those people who krupana means krupam arhati iti krupanaha. Krupam, pity. A person who is fit for pittiness or to be pitied, he is known as a krupana. Like who you normally pity? A beggar. Or even misers for that matter, you pity on them, no? Say, what person, yeah? He has so much money, so much of disposal of wealth, but he lives like a poor beggar, we say, no? He also he deserves pity. He says, yours, a person who works with that intention of fruit in his mind or accomplishment in his mind, he is just like that Krupana. Don't have that. Be away from that fruit. If you're all the time you're in agitation because of the fruit. While doing the work, you are agitated. Before doing the work, you are perturbed. After the work, you are again disturbed. I could have done this way, I could have done that way, I was expecting this much, this didn't happen, that didn't happen, and you're focusing your mind for no reason and making the mind more and more active and strong, which eventually causes you no peace of mind. But what about karma yoga? A person who dedicates his fruit and works, here Lord Krishna says, it is peace for him all the time. While doing the work, before doing the work, and even after doing the work, he is at peace. He is not concerned. He is basically concentrating on the work, what he is doing. 100% input, so expect 100% output. So there should be an understanding of a God-centric activity which will take you much, much more ahead. At any point you still feel, take the umbrella of the Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, what we said, Buddha Sharanam Anvicha. Take refuge in the understanding that you are serving God. As simple as that. This is, God has designated me to do this. Don't we do so many things like our parents told us, go and do this, go and get that, or go and get a coconut from the market, or go and get some flowers from the market. They tell us, so many odd jobs they tell us. And decently good jobs also, depending on our capacity. When we do that, why don't you do entire periphery of your jobs thinking that you are doing this for serving God? Strive for the thought that I want nothing. Otherwise, you become a krupana. You become a beggar. Don't beg. An action which can liberate a person, which when you make it a karma yoga, what happened? Just by your wrongdoing or understanding, you fall back into the samsara. Okay, we'll do another verse. Verse 50. Please repeat. Buddhi yukto jahatiha ubhe sukruta dushkrute tasmad yogaya yujjasva yoga karmasu kaushalam. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. This is another famous verse where you are doing an act with dexterity. And when will dexterity come? Only when you have that focus, right, on a particular job. Otherwise you will not have dexterity. And another understanding of this particular yoga karmasu kaushalam is that the very action which was binding you into samsara by giving you papa or punya, now with the understanding of karma yoga, you having offered that to me or saying that it is a dedication to me, has eventually changed the entire course of the karma yoga itself, and you are moving now towards liberation without getting caught in the wheel of samsara. That is the dexterity. I was mentioning to you about the Tanjavur. There in this Brihadeshwara temple, now the king wanted to select the best sculptor. When you talk about the dexterity, focus on work and dedication towards work, so he says, I want to get the best sculptor. There are more than 10,000 sculptors working on the project at the huge Srirangam temple in Tanjavur, Tamil Nadu. If one gets a chance, you all must see that temple. So this king Rajaraja Chola, what he does is, he goes personally, he says, I don't want to leave it to the judgment of anybody else. I will go and survey the best sculptor. And he keeps going from one artist to another artist. And there he sees one sculptor who is extraordinarily, he is at his job. He is doing that job with tremendous dexterity and focus. And he had a habit, like he was chewing pan excessively. So in between, he used to just turn his head a bit, and there was a boy who was holding a pan where he used to spit in the pan. Just his head used to turn, but his eyes used to, he would not change his glance. He would twist his glance and keep it wherever he was working, but only just turn his face and spit. Now the king comes there. He stands behind him while he's working. This fellow, he spat into that bowl for 3-4 times. And then what the king does is, he tells that boy, you give me that pan. And he holds the pan. And this fellow, for about 15 minutes, the king is holding the pan and this fellow is spitting in the pan, but his focus is on the work. He does not even understand that the king with his entire retinue is come and standing behind him. That was the dexterity. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. So in whatever job we are doing, see, it is not that we don't have to do great things in life. Do small things in a great way. That should be our motto. Because everybody will not get to do great things. No? You may not get the job of building a dam or building a great power project or building a huge refinery. We will not get that. Okay, whatever we get, let's do it in the greatest manner possible, with attention on each and every aspect, a nitty-gritty, how it could be improved to the best level possible, and achieve success in life. So Lord Krishna, see how he's telling us, don't look at the fruit, don't get agitated, focus on your work, do it with dexterity, and see what all you're achieving by this way. You achieve in this world and you also achieve for the outer world. That is the message we need to understand from his teachings. And we need to imbibe in our life, primarily. Okay. Shall we all sit for meditation now? Please, wherever you all are, comfortably be seated. Adjust your body a bit. If any part of your body is paining, just slightly adjust a bit and make yourself comfortable. Ensure your back is straight, head, neck and spine in a straight line. Your body is completely at ease. Your face is completely relaxed. Bring a gentle smile on your face. Ensure your forehead is relaxed. Eyes closed very gently, as though two petals are sitting on each other. Now you are in a state of complete ease and relaxed position. Please take a few deep breaths. Inhale and exhale as deep as you can. Now we are doing the Panchakosha Viveka, where the pure consciousness has 5 impermanent sheets. We are now going to discard each and every sheet one by one. The operating principle is anything which you can see is an object to you. That object is not you. Now, slowly clench your fist and release. You could feel your body. It is the body. I could see it, even with my eyes closed. Label it, the body, Annamaya Kosha. I am not this body. This is impermanent, and this only works in the presence of the consciousness, the Supreme Truth. Now let's go deeper. Am I the prana, the life forces? feel the breath going in and out of your nostrils. I'm able to see the breath going in and out. I can vividly feel that. Label it. The prana. The pranamaya kosha. This too is an object which will perish one day. And this pranamaya kosha functions only under the consciousness. Now, let's go a little more deeper. Am I the mind? Let's examine. Can you see your mind? Yes, I do. Some time back, there were so many thoughts going in and out of my mind. Now, I see a calm mind with very few thoughts. Sometimes I can notice I'm angry, sometimes confused, sometimes agitated. So then I'm not the mind to label it, the mind. The manomaya kosha. Even these two works in the presence of the consciousness. Even this too will perish one day. Now let's go a little more deeper. Then am I the buddhi, the controller of the mind? Let's examine. The buddhi is of the nature of nischayatmaka. It has the capacity to decide. The mind gives the inputs. The buddhi decides. The faculty of conscience is also a part of this buddhi, the intellect. It helps you to decide what is ethically, morally right or wrong. The buddhi helps you to decide what is logically right or wrong. The buddhi helps you to decide what is subjectively correct or incorrect. In simple terms, if I ask you, what is 20 plus 20? You gave the correct answer, 40. How? You could see the buddhi collecting the data, processing the data, and giving you a reply as 40. Very clear and evident in your mind. That is the buddhi, which was very evident to be seen. Then I'm not the buddhi too. Label it. Vijnanamaya kosha. I'm not this too. Let's go deeper. Travel more deeper within you. You reach a stage where you have now discarded the body sheath, the prana sheath, the mental sheath, and the intellectual sheath. These are all objects functioning in the wave of consciousness. They are all impermanent, to pass away one day from your true self. Now, having gone deep enough, you are able to experience a state of blankness, where there are no thoughts, a complete experience of stillness, shunyata, absence of thoughts, which is bliss, filled with ignorance of knowing nothing. Am I this sheath of bliss? Even this too I can see. A while ago it was not there, and now I experience the sheath of bliss. So I am not the sheath of bliss too. Then what is my true self? You are that consciousness in the presence of which all all these 5 sheets are operative. How do I experience that consciousness? I would request you to slowly lift both your hands about 6 inches from wherever they are. Place them in midair and feel the energy in the hands. Feel the awareness in your hands. Feel the consciousness in your hands. At some point you can even feel a tingling sensation. You are now experiencing that pure consciousness in your hands. The same way it is present in your entire body. It is just that wherever you take your awareness to, you can feel it over there. Otherwise, it is always present in your entire body. This pure consciousness, this pure awareness, this pure Chaitanya Shakti is the true self, which is your true nature. You can bring your hands down, place them comfortably on your lap. Keep feeling the awareness in the entire body. Whichever part of the body you want to feel, take your awareness to that part of the body and feel it. Now slowly rub your palm. Place them on your eyes and gently and lovingly open your eyes. I hope you all are feeling completely relaxed. Whenever you focus your attention on the consciousness, it energizes your body. Whenever you're positioned in your mind, it de-energizes your body. So at all moments possible, try to shift your focus to the consciousness. And now you have learned the art of doing that. If anybody has any questions on this, please post the questions. I'll switch on the Q&A. Okay, Shamli asks about, could you please suggest some books for us to read, either about Adi Shankaracharya or some commentaries by him? See, Adi Shankaracharya, his last Prakarana Grantha which he wrote was Viveka Chudamani, and I would suggest you can go in for Viveka Chudamani. It's one of the most intricate and in-depth book. So, and since I know your mental frame on the spiritual knowledge, you can definitely go for Viveka Chudamani. Okay, I'll just take a question of Chetna first.
Hari Om Srinivas.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask, like, whatever we have learned up till now, based on it, like, I have this question that all our karma is basically like, a work of our mind and intellect.
Yes.
Because, like, our consciousness will always guide us to do the right thing. So the main, what to say, ingredients are, like, our intellect and our mind, which is playing a role in bringing about the karma that we are bringing about.
Okay.
The second part of this is that based on our karma, we get heaven and hell and a rebirth.
Correct.
So, is there something like a heaven, like, which is outside this earth, or, like, heaven and hell, all of this is to be experienced in this planet itself, as a living being?
I'll tell you. No, it is what you experience here is the part of your prarabdha karma. Okay. Now, after the jiva passes away, so the sukshma sharira and the karana sharira are waiting for the next birth. In some cases, what happens is there is an immediate birth which happens. Okay. It could be of any womb again. It could be insect, worm, bird, animal, fish, whatever it is, or human, whatever. Yeah. Most of the cases, what happens is, if a person has enough of papa to his account, till the exhaustion of that papa, where the next birth is decided, he goes briefly to a hell to experience, immediately come back as per his prarabdha computation to take a fresh birth. And the same applies if he has done good deeds to exhaust his punya, he goes to heaven. These are intermediary stations which do not come under the 7 upper worlds and the 7 lower worlds. And these 7 lower and 7 upper constitute to be one Brahmanda, which is universe. Likewise, there are crores and crores of universes, which are known as multiverse. Yeah? So we have the substations of heaven and earth. So it need not be necessarily that you are in the same Brahmanda. You can be at any place in these 14 worlds under a particular Brahmanda. Briefly, you go to heaven and earth, which are the waiting stations. That is a brief period.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And Lata is asking, today is also Ramanujacharya's birth anniversary. I don't know per se his birth anniversary. What I know is Ramanujacharya was born in about 1136 or something, in the year 1136. But I don't know his date of birth. Okay. One second. I think Nirja has a question. One second. Okay.
Sir.
Yeah. Please tell me.
Today is the first class, sir. Like, I felt so happy. I'm satisfied.
Oh, thank you. So what we can do is we'll add you to the group.
Okay, sir.
And we give you the recordings of the lectures after each and every lecture, so you can use it for revision and much more in-depth study. And as far as all the earlier 20 lectures we have done, we'll share with you the previous recordings. And what happens is, if you go through the previous recordings, it will be much more helpful to you to understand the future ones. Yeah, because many issues have been discussed.
Yeah, I missed all the classes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
No. Okay. Neera, I'm taking your question.
सर, जब हम छोटे थे तो हमने एक पिक्चर देखी थी संत ज्ञानेश्वर.
ओके.
तो सर ये जो आपने आज बताया आदि शंकराचार्य, उसमें भी यही स्टोरी थी. तो क्या ये सेम है दोनों?
नहीं ना, वो इतना है कि वो महापुरुष थे, ये भी महापुरुष थे. क्या था? सेम था.
ये सर जो आपने बताया कि वो क्रोकोडाइल और वो 8 साल के थे और माँ ने कहा था मरने पे आएंगे, सेम स्टोरी थी, लेकिन नाम था संत ज्ञानेश्वर जी.
नहीं, एक कोइंसिडेंस हो सकता है. सी नदी, वो टाइम पे सब स्नान नदी में ही होते थे, तो पैर पकड़ना वो, बट ये 8 साल और ये वगैरह, तो वो थोड़ा ज्यादा कोइंसिडेंस हो गया. और ये क्या है ना, मूवीज में भी थोड़ा ड्रामेटाइज करते हैं, थोड़ा अच्छा बनाने के लिए, जो बेस्ट ऑफ दी सीक्वेंसेस ऐसा लेने में शायद वो लोग ने लिया होगा. बट ये तो सच बात है कि शंकराचार्य जी के साथ ऐसा हुआ था. ओके. राइट, थैंक यू. So we'll end today. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Chinmay Sadgurave Namaha. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. A special reverence to Sri Adi Shankaracharya. It is only and only because of him we are able to receive this knowledge, as though it has been a spoon feeding for us. And we also salute the entire Guru Parampara, right from his time of 800 AD till date. Whoever has helped us to seek this knowledge, to the entire lineage of Guru Parampara, we offer our Sastanga Namaskars. To the Almighty, our infinite gratitude and devotion and prayers. Please keep blessing us with more and more understanding capacity and more skills to make this a living experience. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you everybody for being a part of this wonderful journey. Let's meet tomorrow again. And if you all have any questions in between, please do post on the WhatsApp group. Hari Om.